Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining in. Today we're going to discuss DAM, Database Activity Monitoring, Cloud Security Analysis, and Data Logs, Lessons Learned. I'm going to present the people. My name is Noam Dror. I'm going to moderate the session. And let's start with Alon Rosenthal. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So thank you for joining. My name is Alon Rosenthal. I've been doing data security for the last 18 years. Whom of you who know me in the past, I'm the person who invented dynamic data masking. My first company was acquired by Informatica. After I saw my first company doing Informatica with dynamic data masking, I left Informatica and founded SecuPi 7 years ago in order to solve some limitations and fragmentations in the DAM market, which we're going to discuss today. So pleasure being here.
That's good. Thanks, Alon. Frederic will join us soon. Frederic Petit is a DAM expert, and I'll let him introduce himself once he joins in and solve his technical difficulties. But let's start with the first question first. So the first question for the discussion is, what is the purpose of data activity monitoring? What do you do with it? How can you expand its purpose? And are there really multiple types of them or one type of them? So maybe Alon, can you take that, start with that, and Frederic will join and expand that.
Sure. So, DAM has been a market for the last 20 years, primarily regarding SOX compliance, right? That's where it all started. And SOX compliance had a very limited view on protection of data. And it was primarily due to the Enron breach. We need to ensure that our DBAs are not maliciously changing data in our databases. But as time passed and other types of regulations stepped in, that are more data-centric. Take, for example, GDPR, data privacy, CCPA, right? Putting more and more focus on data, the place of DAM has to move into something which is broader than just monitoring access of the DPAs, because there's nothing better than DAM to encapsulate the requirements to address, for example, privacy and data security challenges, right, which we see more and more. Data cross-border controls, right? What's better than our controls on the databases to ensure that access to the database is done on a need-to-know basis? By the way, this is when I'm being asked by CIOs and others, what's GDPR, what's CCPA, what's PDPA or LGPD? In one sentence, it's basically allowing users to access data on a need-to-know basis. If we are able to ensure that access on the data on a need-to-know basis, right, we are in line with all the privacy regulations. Think of that even right to be forgotten is basically adhering to this requirement of allowing access to data on a need-to-know basis. Here it's on the basis of the client consent, right, that nobody should be able to see this client data. Because he has to be forgotten and he has no active account for the last 15 years, right? So why should anybody be able to see that? So in essence, all those privacy regulations are also talking about the right to be forgotten as others, also talking about the need to protect data on a need-to-know basis. And what's better than a DAM that already has been distributed across our thousands of databases to do that and to protect our data. And by the way, that's one of the reasons I founded SecuPi is to provide an overarching platform, because I saw the position and the responsibility of our DAM install base to do more and beyond that, to include the ability, for example, to apply dynamic data masking on sensitive data, to apply fine-grained access control. Today it's called ABAC, attribute-based access control, and even talking about encryption of data at rest, right? Why should our DAM platform even be able to de-identify data using maybe encryption or masking techniques, right? I foresaw that as a natural extension of DAM. Another way to look at it is not from the functional side, it's also from the persona side, right? We have always been fixated around the privileged users, the DBAs, the account admins. I think that we need also to look at different types of persona outside of the realm of the DBAs and the account admins. We need also to look at business users. We also need to look potentially at even analysts or data scientists, call center representatives, accessing sensitive data from applications, and even cloud account admins that have root privileges. We need also to extend our viewpoint to the personas that we're trying to protect with our DAM posture across those thousands of databases. Another challenge that evolved, of course, is the cloud. Right? The old agent approach that we have put on our thousands of databases now cannot work on cloud. So what can we do there? How can we really protect data in cloud where we cannot put agents on the database, right? So there, other challenges have been noticeable around the ability to restrict access to those thousands of cloud databases without putting agents, and keeping in mind that also the risk posture has increased through the different personas, maybe the cloud account admin of AWS, and also the free of data movement from Europe to the US to APAC, and each one with its own cloud data flow limitations, right? Singapore, China restricting access to data to cloud through Alibaba only. So these are all things that come in mind when you think about the next journey of DAM. And I see Frederic also joined, so would love to get his viewpoint as well.
Yeah. Hey, Frederic. You can unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, I can unmute. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. If you want, you can start your camera. You will be able to see you. So maybe take a few minutes just to introduce yourself, and then we'll go to the question, which is, what is DAM all about? What's the purpose?
Right. Yeah. Actually, I cannot open. It doesn't let me open my camera.
Okay.
So I'm very sorry. So yeah, let me introduce myself quickly. First of all, I would like to thank Alon and SecuPi and Noam and everyone for this invitation. Actually, I crossed paths with Alon many years ago when he was Active Base, and I still have on my YouTube channel videos I made on this product. So I've been following more or less, but basically I came to the US where I live now for deploying a French/German technology called chip card, which is all about cryptography, and basically I'm a crypto guy. But and in the early 2000s, I was one of the technical lead of the mass deployment of American Express card called Blue from American Express. And this is, it didn't go, so the market collapsed to restart 15 years later. Since I moved to cybersecurity with Motorola, where I did a lot of stuff, but I mostly ended up doing 2 years program in database security. And this is what took me to Guardium, where I ended up, where I did professional services, initial deployment, and this kind of stuff. But, and I like Guardium, and I really enjoyed it. But after many years, I felt the need for practicing and putting into practice and action my knowledge. And I moved to a position where I did Guardium and Sonargy, right, which is analytics of Guardium data. And I split my time between those two things, 20% max on Guardium, because I developed some tools for automated. And I spent 80% of my time, sometimes 90%, on analytics with Sonargy. And out of this experience, where I was quite productive because it's where I wrote all those articles on LinkedIn and so forth, and videos, and I drew two conclusions, which basically took me to this webinar, and it's why I accepted this gladly this invitation. And those two conclusions, it's one, you cannot do analytics on them without data enrichment, right? So I've got an article and an exchange with Ron Ben-Nathan, with the founder of Guardium and Sonargy on this topic, right? But enrichment has a prerequisite, which is the quality of the data. Okay, so you need good quality of the data. And we had that more or less with agent, with some limitation, but more or less okay. The problem is with the move to the cloud, which is absolutely needed. So we say goodbye to the agents, right? So we say goodbye to their limitation, okay, yeah. But we also, so what do we get instead? We get mostly native login auditing. And right. Here the quality of data just dropped dramatically, right? And I know that from first-hand and second-hand experience. So we're probably going to talk about that later on, but I tried to implement native auditing on MongoDB with Guardium implementation, and it was a disaster, right? Not because it didn't work, but because it would have stopped the program I developed on monitoring, excessive extraction of sensitive data. It would have just stopped that, which was the reason why we had Sonargy and Guardium in the first place. And it was really killing. The second-hand experience I've got, it's because this is about security, right? But I know companies who had to go back to agent because their auditor said it's not good enough, right? Your native auditing is not good enough. So there is really a major challenge here on the security side, just like on the auditing side. And my understanding, it's SecuPi is basically a way to try to fix this issue, right? So it's why, and I'm interested in getting good data for doing good analytics because I know what good analytics can be, right? So it's, I'm very interested in what SecuPi does because it's feed my stuff. It may feed my stuff very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's maybe go to the next question. And I think Frederic, try now to start your camera. I think it should work right now.
Okay.
So the next question is about compliance and regulation. So we know a lot of the, the purpose of using them is to answer some of the compliance and regulation challenges. Can you talk a little bit about that? What type of regulations, how it addresses it?
Yes, so basically, because I was, a long time ago, I started with Guardiums and I saw the evolution, right? And really there are two parts, two periods. So there is the easy period, right? Where with SACs, we had to monitor privileged users, which is a really little piece and part of the traffic, of the database traffic, really small, right? Then you don't need a large system, you don't. But when you come to get into PCI, HIPAA, California stuff, so now GDPR, now you have to monitor everything. So the amount of data is just huge, right? And here, this is where you cannot do any of those stuff, auditing or security, without analytics, right? Because the data being so large, and there is nothing in between, right? It's and this is where you need a solution for analytics. So we can discuss: do we need to record everything, but do we need to store and make available everything? Those are discussions about that, but it doesn't change the fact that we need to record and to log everything, and it has to be of good quality.
Yeah.
And good quality for making, to be able to discriminate within this traffic what is noise and what is not, what is important and what is not, right? And to satisfy the need for auditing, which could be a bit, I think that she should raise the bar, but this is out of my pay grade, right?
So
but from a security standpoint, the completeness and the integrity of the data, it's absolutely crucial. For example, the agent in Guardian, which I love, right? I really love, I enjoyed working with the stuff. But in terms of how many records get extracted, it doesn't give you the information all the time. It doesn't. Sometimes it's meaning that probably because they do a very good job at Guardian with the agent, but probably reach some limits. It's not just the cloud and so forth. It's also the agent at some point are not good enough either, right? So we need something, and to move to the cloud cannot be avoided. So I know companies, they have to go to the cloud. So you need a solution for the cloud that is at least as good as agent, but actually better, because the need for security and compliance with all those regulations is much higher.
Well, it's a great answer, because that's exactly the next question. So you explained a little bit about the regulation stuff. It started with small privileged users, and then it expanded because of privacy regulations and healthcare regulations and card payment regulations. So I understand that. And as you said, more and more technologies are moving into the cloud. So maybe the next question to Alon is, what are the challenges of them for cloud-based databases?
Sure. So as Frederic mentioned, it's a lot about context, and it's a lot about the ability to do the next evolution, namely to be reactive. Right? The main limitation of just collecting log is the fact that you see what happened in the past, right? Taking logs, analyzing those logs, partial as they may be, you can only identify activities that happened 5 hours ago, 10 hours ago. What's the remediation then? Right? It's basically the inability to have any type of proactive controls, and we're in 2023. Right? The need to apply deletion, the need to apply access on the need to know, the need to apply filtering, preventing privilege abuse, preventing credential theft. It's all over the place. Even the zero trust definition, that's an interesting expansion of the zero trust definition that everybody has been always looking at as being very network centric. I didn't show you a slide for that. The old zero trust definition, it was not data centric at all for a couple of years. Now the Department of Defense and the NSA have declared it to be also data centric. And the new definition of zero trust by the NSA, by the Department of Defense, as was released in version 2.0 in July 2022, now it includes data tagging, it includes attribute-based access control, and it includes even encryption. So also the definition of zero trust requires us to be much more proactive. Now, how can you do that? Right? And that's why our approach has been to provide different options. And because the only ability to solve that on a Fortune 500, which we serve, right, from the Department of Defense, from large US banks, Caterpillar, Bryson, and others, the only way really to solve it is to give options. And the option that we decided to provide to our customer base is both to choose from a set of transparent gateways. So they can just use a transparent gateway between the application and the databases to be able to capture the request, and also not only to monitor the request, but also to apply some filtering, dynamic masking, blocking, and even encryption, if we're talking about data cross-border controls, as well as apply application agents. what does an application agent means? We decided to take the data monitoring agents that all large organizations deploy, from the likes of Datadog, from the likes of AppDynamics and New Relic. Every large organization deploys some application performance monitoring tools today. That's of course a must, especially in the cloud. And what those application monitoring tools do, they provide rich context through the application stack. Right? They know who's the end user. They even know how much data was accessed, by whom. And we have taken the same approach. So in addition to provide a rich set of transparent gateways that you can deploy, we can also provide agents on application servers to provide the missing context that was always there, right? The service account, right? We were always frustrated by the service account, because the idea behind that is that if we look at the databases, right, we don't see the username, we don't see the OS user, we don't see the application role, we don't see the application name. You know, there's so many limitations if I just look at, in this example, in BigQuery. But once we are able to put an application agent, then we have all the richness available for us, and hence we can start to apply different policies based on this rich context that now is available for our DAM. Might not only be passive and analyzing this activity, but also, for example, applying even logical deletion for it to be forgotten, or taking access of Swiss client data for our New York office. So that's why we thought about extending the DAM with more functionality, more persona, as well as also with rich optionality, either using a native, which of course, taking the database logs, but as Frederic mentioned, the limitations of context and also the limitations of proactiveness with the database log crunching, also the ability to deploy a set of transparent agents, as well as transparent gateways to complement the DAM passive approach and to be more proactive.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like you're saying quality of data is important and the type of data that comes in from those logs are important. So maybe Frederic, can you expand a little bit of that, the available
yes.
solution?
And actually, actually the previous slide from Alon is really telling, because this is exactly my experience, right? And specifically with Mongo, right? So on MongoDB, we were still on-prem, right? But the sysadmin wanted to get rid of the agent. So they got wind of native auditing. But the implement in Mongo, the native auditing is quite basic. Basically, you got session information, login information, and really kind of limited information about the action, the SQL or the command in Mongo done, right? And with that, you can do nothing, right? You don't have the actual SQL, you don't have how much data you got back. So without mentioning all the information you can get at the application level, because Alon is totally right to mention that with the people working with agents, right, we are kind of used to the fact that databases use, application use connection tools where the initial user gets replaced by a generic one. So if the application doesn't pass as part of the SQL being requested some information about the original user, you know nothing, right? It's you have no idea, which was my case, right? It's a little bit in the dark, right? So having the kind of collection of data at the application level, it makes a lot of sense, right? But with Mongo, not only you can get the information about the SQL and exactly what it is, right? And how much got extracted, but it's outside the native auditing, right? And I think it's outside because if you put it into the native auditing, you must be ready to store a lot of data, And this, I think they don't want to do it. It makes sense. So all this bulk and major part of information is put in OS files outside the native auditing, and it's not on the database, which is crucial. And you can get that, okay? But now you need to get both native auditing and the OS file, and you need something to reconcile, okay? So IBM decided not to do that and just to provide native auditing.
Yeah.
So we were really kept in the dark. In addition to the fact that the way they stored the information from the native auditing is really was at that time anyway, really a setback and going back to as compared to the high quality of the parsing they were able to do, right? So I made a video on the database, Guardium database, its structure, the data model it uses. It's a beauty. It's a beauty. Except here, the beauty is gone, right? It's gone. So it was not possible to move to native auditing. It was really extremely difficult. But on top of that, it's really backward as compared to what we had with the agent, because the agent captures the traffic as it is, which is standardized. It's SQL based, right? So whereas native auditing is not a standard. So each database is specific, right? So you need really the vendor to come up with a good solution, which may be resource intensive to make it, because if you do, if you've got a storage of the data specific to each database, it's hell, right? Because a lot of companies, they've got a large number of data and databases.
Yeah.
So now you've got it's really going backward. So if you take the agent at the application level, like SecuPi does, here you raise the level of quality of data. So now you still have the question of how to store all those data and so forth, and have solutions. Okay, so but you cannot have a good storage solution if it's to store data of low quality. What for?
Yeah.
Right. So at the start, you really need data you can enrich, data with all the context. My project, open source project, is called Context 22 because of that, because the context is absolutely crucial to be provided if you want to do something with those data, right? So you need to raise really the bar, right? And with the agent, it's good, but not good enough because of connection pool, right? And the native auditing, it's really a drop in quality of data. So it's
makes sense. So you touched on multiple challenges, right? You talked about quality of data and context and cloud and standardization. You touched on different challenges. So I think the next question is, looking forward, going to the future, how do you see, or how would you like to see the DEM space evolve, in the future? What kind of trends do you see that are up and coming? So maybe Frederic, you want to start? Because
if you want,
you talked about the challenges.
Yeah, my experience is really, given the amount of data from a regulatory standpoint companies have to log, which is huge, you cannot avoid analytics. This is. So therefore, how do I want, and you cannot do analytics without rich data, right? So it's clear, because it's not just, you need to make the difference, right? To segregate between what is noise and what is not, right? If everything is the same for you, right, you're gonna absolutely exhaust your resources, right? You need to have a smart approach, which is possible only if you've got the context Alon was talking about, right? So you need a good context from the data you can collect and a good context by enrichment with the data you can get from outside CMDBs and stuff like that, right? So this is how I want to see the DAM. It's really to provide strong analytics capabilities based on good quality of data. And we are not there on those 2 points, unless SecuPi becomes the main player, right? Okay, so the second thing, I think it's we need more integration. And this is also based on my experience, because my job was to detect excessive extraction of sensitive data. This is what they wanted, right? And I did. Except that when you see what is an extraction of sensitive data, is someone accessing the database, right? Putting that in an Excel spreadsheet, right? And storing it somewhere. As soon as it's extracted, DAM is blind.
Right, you don't know.
Right, you don't see anything. And this is where I think we could have done a little bit more to integrate my findings with endpoint security, whether it's DLP or desktop monitoring, but because data have a life cycle.
Right.
And data leak always starts in databases, because this is where the data are, right? And if you've got data elsewhere, originally it came from a database. So you need a way to follow this life cycle and to point where data are not where they should be.
Yeah.
Right?
So more integrated, holistic view. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Right. So this is where, and I think it's possible, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as the database DAM detect extraction of excessive extraction or suspicious extraction, to inform, right, different system that, because we know where those data got extracted to. Right, this with information we can provide. So we are able to tell, okay, so this extraction, this is for DLP, or this is for endpoint, or this is some. It's or to put that to a pool and security people figure it out. But we have the capabilities, the information exists to follow this data life cycle. And when you do that, you can reduce, because data leak, malicious data leak, voluntary data leak are very rare, right? Thanks God.
Yeah.
But it's very rare. What happened much more, it's accidental one. Yeah, and I explained that, people are not that careful, right?
Yeah.
And they expose data that way, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And my idea is we need better integration, right? Which I had trouble really promoting.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Alon, what's your view? Yeah.
Yeah. So I have so of course fully aligned. And we in SecuPi have seen this trend over the last few years. And that's why we have built this ecosystem where, for example, data catalogs. Take, for example, Azure Purview or Elation or Colibra or Informatica EDC. Right? They hold a lot of tagging and classification information that we can use to enrich the data that we collect from our audit trails, to the DAM. Right? So we can, for example, enrich the data and be more cohesive with the ecosystem of data catalogs that are being created and populated with business tagging and now we can enrich the logging of the database activities with those tags that have been done to those data classification tools. By the way, those classification tools sometimes create a fiduciary responsibility to protect the data. Because now that I know that I have my customer data in 200 databases, I need now to put a dam in front of them to control access to those 200 databases. And even after that, I need maybe to restrict access on a need-to-know basis, right, to address the CCPA. So one type of integration is with the data catalogs that we see that will make the dam be more valuable for the organization. The second type of integration is, as Frederic mentioned, we have done to two Swiss banks integration with MIP, RMS, with the Azure DLP platform. And the integration goes as follows. Once a user is creating an Excel sheet or a PDF file or a CSV file from his CRM application or front office application, SecuPi tags that, classifies that, and automatically puts RMS, encrypts the file that is generated with the client data. So the Excel sheet includes data from the databases through Excel or through an application is both tagged, classified, and monitored by the DAM, but also the file itself can be automatically encrypted. The data within the file can be masked, and the file itself is tagged by Azure DLP. It is called Azure MIP RMS. So already we've done that, but this is currently being required by the top regulated customers, the financials, Swiss banks, few telecos. We're doing that there, but we see this approach and this requirement extend itself to other industries with the new requirements of cloud security, with the new requirements around the privacy and the data security. So definitely the integration is super critical, and we see that, and we are following this trend by enriching both analytics as well as enriching the activities that we are able to perform, from the dynamic masking to the filtering to the logical deletion, right, to be forgotten, to the hard deletion, and to the encryption of even the Excel sheet that are generated or the extracts from MyToad and SSMS. Yes.
It sounds like it makes the process more reliable, because in structured data, you can classify a lot easier. You know your structured data, you know where the sensitive data is. You can say this is HIPAA related, this is PCI related, this is privacy related. So then it makes more sense to integrate your DLP solution into that when you create files out of it. So,
and you don't want duplication of the catalog, right? You don't want to have the sensitive data defined in Guardium and then defined in a catalog, and you might have Elation and Colibra and Purview and other catalogs, right? You want to be able to ingest all the classifications wherever they appear and provide a single source of truth within the DAM.
Another interesting thing I see here in your chart, Alon, is that you're talking about fine-grained access control as it relates to the tagging of data, the classification of data. Can you explain, why you're getting into fine-grained access control because of classification? How does it help customers with access controls?
Yeah, sure. So when you look at the problem from a bird's view, right, and you have different personas, and then you have different tagging. So the fastest and the most efficient way to reduce the risk and the liability of our organizations is by defining which persona can access which type of data. This is the first, let's call it, cross-grained requirement that everybody needs to do, right? That's the basic, at least today, and for sure in the future, right? So, and then we start to talk both about cross-grained access control and maybe default masking, right? One is, why would a certain privileged user offshore should be able to see sensitive data in our 2000 databases? That's basic. And then we go and cross the line into more of an attribute-based access control. attributes both around the data itself, right? Taking tags and classifications from the catalogs, as well as enriching the user attributes such as the role, the location, the citizenship, as well as the data. For example, consent of a client. In Europe, we're doing a lot of right to be forgotten, logical deletion, filtering based on location, citizenship, and others. So taking all of those attributes into consideration when you provide access to our sensitive data in our 2000 databases. And of course, we do not want to boil oceans, right? So we would start with the most critical databases, most critical classifications. We see it also in the federal, right? With the different requirements of the federal around federal data going out to telcos, going out to financials, right? With more requirements around that. And that's most of a row level type of access control, but also on the column level access control based on those tags that are defined on a column, such as PII, PCI, PHI. So starting with the coarse-grained, and then over time, adding more and more attributes taking into consideration and getting it into the true attribute-based access control, the ABAC itself. And then, of course, with no code changes, that's of course without changing the architecture of our solutions and without changing our databases.
Okay, that sounds good. So adding to what Frederic said, which is you want to see more integrated, more holistic picture of the data, you're saying you should also add some access controls and classification and tagging. So that's the enriched data. So that it sounds like that's a good evolution of that.
May I say something on this topic?
Yeah.
Right. Son, there are two parts in database security, in a sense, right? You have security controls, right, to mitigate risk, but you need the monitoring part, right, to verify that those security controls are really what you wanted them to be, right? So you really need to do those two things, right? Meaning that the monitoring of your system through analytics is really a major feed on you defining security control, right? This and the two work together, right? So because you put in place something and you want to see the result, right? You cannot just assume it's going to be okay, right? You don't know, right? So it's a second thing also. Alon mentioned something. I think it's a major challenge today, right? It's the tendency, because we have to companies have to log everything, is a tendency to actually end up trying to boil the ocean. So this is really a challenge, because sometimes it's a little bit, companies try to do that because they think it's audit requires it. And here we need a smarter approach, right? I can tell you, I had some UBA active, honestly, on some things that had absolutely no value whatsoever, right? So because it was indiscriminate, right? So it was really applied to anything, because one of the things we are not sure of the sensitive data. So we were told everything is confidential. Yeah,
everything.
Yeah, so if everything is confidential, be ready to put a lot of resources to process them, right? And them having to look at, I mean, findings that are not, right? We've got plenty of examples. It's boiling the ocean. It's not a solution, even though it's maybe true that companies feel a bit stuck with that.
Yes.
Right? But we need a smarter approach, right? So also another thing, it's being real time, like which is not the case, like Alon mentioned with native auditing, right? So gives you also the ability to look at what gets extracted, to scan what gets extracted. Because one of the issues you may have in some companies, or many companies, it's they don't really let you crawl their database to find sensitive data. Okay, so I experienced it firsthand, right? And so if you can, in any way, even if you can't crawl the database, you are not going to do that permanently, right? If you do that, I don't know, once a quarter or even once a month, it's probably too much, right? So the ability to complement the crawling, right, by trying to detect with the traffic in real time, by looking at the content of the result set, right, for sensitive data, this is very good, because sometimes also, you know, with the legacy and so forth, sometimes companies don't know exactly what they've got, to be frank, right? So even if they let you crawl, they may forget some databases they are totally forgotten.
Yes.
See them in the traffic when it gets extracted, right? And you can't correct, right? So I think it's well, on this topic, I think it's important, the quality of data, the real time, and not boil the ocean.
Yeah, it sounds like you gave us 3 very good best practices. 1, prioritize, right? Because if everything is as a priority, then nothing is a priority.
Exactly right.
2, you said make sure you have quality data. And 3, because you're monitoring, use the data you monitor to augment crawling the databases. So it sounds very good, 3 best practices.
And a very good feedback, right?
Yeah.
On the security control you put in place, right? It's a
makes sense. Okay, so I think we have only like 7 minutes left for the session. We had some good discussion here. Maybe we should go to Q&A. If you guys want to ask any question, please put it in the Q&A button down below. And the first question people ask here is, how do you look at this holistically? How do you get monitoring information from multiple databases, multiple data warehouses? Do you integrate it with applications? How do you do that? That's the first question.
Sure. So the way that we do that is we have a centralized management server, right, which is an EKS, AKS, GKS. It can be Docker, working on microservices that was born for cloud, right? And this allows us really to embrace the cloud technology and integrate into the existing CI/CD requirements of large organizations, of the large banks and the telecoms, etc., which is really a requirement today, right? So the first thing is really to deploy this central management server, and from there, instead of having collectors and aggregators and different layers in the middle, we say, okay, get out of that. That's too hard to maintain, and in the cloud, the necessity is there. It simply would not work. So there we just basically download enforcement points. And those enforcement points are self-contained, which means that the attribute that they need to make a decision to audit certain activities and not others, to tag those activities, to apply dynamic masking to certain activities, or blocking, or even encryption. This decision is done on the enforcement point. And the enforcement comes with 5 different technology stacks. Why? Because cloud, there's so much variety in the cloud that in order to support AWS, Azure, GCP, IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, right? We had to create options, and those options categorized by, of course, using the native, but also providing transparent gateways, also providing those application overlays, those application agents we talked about, similar approach to AppDynamics, Datadog, and Identitrace and others. And with those different enforcement points that we can distribute out there to one cloud or to cross cloud, we can decide, not having a boiling the ocean approach, but we can gradually increase our footprint, our ability to monitor data and to be proactive around the data and comply with data cross-border controls, encryption requirements, ABAC requirements out there in a gradual and in a way that will not prohibit the growth and the scalability of cloud, which is of course critical.
Makes sense. Frederic, you want to add anything?
But it's more on the analytics side. For me, it's going to be more on this sound. It's you know, today we are lucky, right? There are plenty of tools. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. There is plenty of tools for analytics, right, and storing large amount of data.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think we should consider DAM data that specific. And meaning that a lot of companies want to treat them like any other security log, and with some specifics, which I'm gonna. But I know that, for example, right now a lot of companies are moving to Splunk, right? For the data collected by Guardian move to Splunk, where it's going to sound. What is specific to the DAM data? It's recommended to have a background in data modeling, database architecture, to understand it's not flat file, right? It's like network logs. Yeah. But other than that, you know, we are really lucky nowadays, right? You get Hadoop with R, it's gorgeous, right? You get Splunk. I think Splunk is more for log analysis and analytics, right? But you can still do gorgeous stuff, right? So you've got Elk, Kibana, you've got Tableau, you've got, I mean, you've got plenty of stuff where you can put your data and really have a standard data analysis and data science approach, because you can leverage all those stuff, because the field is absolutely fantastic, absolutely unbelievable, right? So the number of algorithms available and so forth. So I ended up doing predictive analytics, you know, time series analytics using LSTM or Hold Winters. I mean, stuff. I just took what exists, right? So the data scientists, they work for us, right? And they produce a lot of stuff. So let's just use that, right? It's we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to. We need to adapt, yeah, to be specific. But the field of analytics is so great today, right? Yeah. So it's just enjoy it, I would say.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that is to enjoy it while having the right options to collect the data. Exactly. And also to respond on top of that, right? Exactly. A scalable solution that is cloud ready. Yeah, and that's
I think moving from reactive to proactive, right? Exactly. It's a big thing right now. Okay, makes sense. Good. Looks like time is up. We're at the top of the hour. That was a very good discussion. I got more questions here. Some of it is not even questions. That, you know, some people say they want to see a demo. So maybe we can do like part 2 of this session to expand on, you know, how DEM can be expanded into the cloud. But I want to thank you, Alon and Frederic, for a very engaging and insightful discussion here.
You're welcome.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye.